4, mic check 1 2, mic check 1 2.
Good evening. I think we're ready to get started. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We have about 180 folks on YouTube, and since the pandemic, we've been having in-person meetings, but we've also been streaming to YouTube, and it's been great. We have more participation in our meetings. So thank you for being here in person and online. We want to update you on our new Gahanna-Lincoln High School, and I want to start by just introducing myself and who we have on stage here tonight. So I'm Steve Barrett, I'm superintendent. Jill Elliott to my left is our assistant superintendent. Mark Ogden to her left is our owner's rep. He works for Turner Construction. And to his left is Frank Pinciotti, and he works for our builder, Russilli Construction. And to my right is Paul Lawton from DLR, and DLR is our design team, our design architects. So we'll go ahead and get started and share our slideshow. Before I go into introducing the rest of our team, I just want to say you will have the opportunity on 3x5 cards to ask questions. So they will be passed out later tonight. We'll have a short presentation, and we ask that you put one question per card. And please try to write clearly. And in some cases, when we have similar questions or the exact same question, we will combine them and answer them. So we'll get started. So in addition to the people I introduced, another part of our team is Scott Lofton. He's our business director. Aaron Winter is in our business department, and he leads special projects like this construction project. Jessica Williams is our high school principal. Tia Hulleman is our director of curriculum. Jason Bates is here with us tonight. He is our academic officer at Lincoln High School. Sue Wigging has been a big part of this. She is our special education director. Corinne Field is also been a big part of it. She is our coordinator of special education. And again, we have Mark Ogden, who really is sort of the glue that brings the design team, our district team, and our construction team together. So, in addition to DLR, our architects, and Russilli Construction, we have a local architect out of Dublin, and that's Shore Architects. So, I'm not going to name all of the people on our Master Facilities Committee, but this group has been an outstanding of people, knowledgeable about construction, about schools. They represent so many different facets of what goes into a building project like this. And so I am so grateful for their leadership, for their guidance, and their help in designing both Phase 1 and Phase of our Master Facilities Plan. I would be remiss if I didn't express our gratitude to our community for giving us permission to go ahead with this project. We have 5 construction projects besides building a new Gahanna-Lincoln High School. And we're doing additions at Blacklick and High Point Elementary, and additions to all 3 of our middle schools, East, South, and West. And we're doing this work because we're growing. There's lots of undeveloped land that's getting quickly developed in Jefferson Township, and we need to build in time for all the new families that are coming to our district. We're growing every year, and much of this work, our Phase 1 and Phase 2, has been driven by an enrollment study, a demographic study we did on student growth, and that was led by a firm out of Hilliard called Cooperative Strategies. And they basically studied our enrollment, all our housing tracts, our apartments, and our developable land, and they gave us a forecast of where we would be with our student population. And we will approach 9,200 students in the not too far distant future. And soon we will have 2,800 to 2,900 students at our high school. And so this work is driven by data and our growth, and in fact, now we're updating our enrollment study, which was done in 2019, and that should be done sometime this spring. We've had lots of community engagement, some of it before the pandemic. We've had coffees in our community starting in 2018, and we've also had in-person meetings with community members and parents. There were people who live in our community who also teach here at those meetings, and we've had lots of meetings with students, especially at the high school with Jessica Williams leading them, and we've had meetings with staff to determine what do we need in a new high school. And so we've also done online surveys and lots of online meetings that are recorded and on our website. So 9 common themes came out as we engage with our community around building a new high school. The first was to build a new high school on our current site. That was resoundingly clear when we met with people. Some talked early on about a second high school, but when they found out that we would have to renovate this high school, find land for a second high school, and the cost of that was just extraordinarily high. And there was also a question of equity. Could we really make this building, which parts of it are nearly 100 years old, look new? And would it be fair to have a brand new high school where half of our students would be going? And so the most cost-effective, best thing for our students was to build one high school, and that's one of the main themes that we discovered in our engagement. The next theme was to build larger, flexible learning spaces that allow for innovative teaching and learning, to incorporate more vocational education, partnering with Eastland Fairfield. Right now we have 3 vocational programs from Eastland at Clark Hall: architecture, bioscience, and teaching professions. And those are some of our most desired programs because they combine both book learning with apprenticeship learning and powerful experiential learning. And so what our parents and community members said is we'd like to see more of those programs. Our students don't always want to leave our high school and take a bus all the way to Eastland or Fairfield. And so having those programs housed here was important to them. Also, we wanted to integrate more safety and security and to eliminate the need for students to cross the street to go to classes at Clark Hall. We've always been short of parking. We wanted to include ample parking for students and events, and we want to have the ability to build a new high school while we're having school. We want to create an enhanced performing arts wing, enhanced athletic spaces, which include an athletic field house, and we want to expand our cafeteria and auditorium space. Right now, as many of you know, we don't have enough space for all of our students to have lunch here. Our juniors and seniors go out to lunch on a daily basis, and that can get expensive. So we want to ensure that we have enough spaces for our students and enough places for them to eat on campus. So what I want to do now is, now that I've talked about these 9 things, we want to show you how we've implemented these things and planned for these things in our new design. So what Jill Elliott is going to talk to is the spaces we're designing to make these 9 things a reality. So I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Jill Elliott.
Thank you, Steve. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to give the Gahanna community a preview of what you can expect in our new Gahanna-Lincoln High School. This first slide I'll be covering this evening highlights the increases in the square footage that we will see in the new building. We've broken the various components of the building into 5 sections to depict the magnitude of increase we will see in those various spaces. The first line refers to the core academic spaces, and this includes classrooms from our typical math, science, social studies, English classes, as well as some of our more specialized spaces and elective programs such as business, world language, visual arts, and career-based learning. As you can see here, we will realize a 21% increase in our core content area spaces. The next two rows highlight our performing arts and athletic spaces, which, as Mr. Barrett shared, we heard a lot of feedback about the desire for us to enhance these areas. You can see there's a pretty significant increase in the square footage of these spaces, and we've added things that include practice rooms, makeup and dressing rooms for our performing arts areas, as well as a field house in our athletics wing. The increase for what we're calling our extended learning areas is pretty large. This is primarily due to the fact that we only have extended learning areas currently on our Clark Hall campus. We don't have them currently on main campus. Extended learning areas allow classrooms to extend out beyond the traditional classroom walls and into these collaborative spaces. And they're great for things like book clubs and project-based learning and experiential learning, also for academic supports, like having students work with peers or teachers in small groups. An important note about these extended learning sections is that they will be located in our academic wings, and they do allow us space for additional classrooms in the future should our enrollment projections increase at some point for some reason. The last category that you see here are our auxiliary spaces, and this includes a wide variety of necessary spaces in a school, such as our hallways, our administrative spaces, counseling spaces, areas for mechanical equipment and custodial areas. As you can imagine, in a school the size of ours, we need a lot of square footage devoted to these areas. And so we will have an 18% increase from what we have now in our auxiliary spaces. An added note about these auxiliary spaces and that 18% increase is that DLR has calculated that we will be gaining 40% wider hallways, and so that's something to celebrate, which also gives us about a 27% increased traffic flow efficiency. So also something for us to celebrate. Overall, you can see that after planning for our full program needs, our new high school will be 515,617 square feet, which is a 31% increase over our current building. This next slide helps to outline our specific number of classrooms that we'll have in the new building. We know there have been many questions regarding whether or not we'll have enough classrooms to accommodate our projected enrollment needs, and the answer is yes. As you may recall from community conversations and levy information in 2020, the number of classrooms in our existing building was not necessarily the driving force for our building needs. Currently, we have enough classrooms to hold our classes even during our busiest period, which happens to be first period. This slide shows a breakdown of classrooms. However, it's important to note that these numbers can change from year to year, depending on the number of students in each course and the classrooms needed for each particular content. On the right side, you can see some of our increase to 136 classrooms, with the breakdowns we'll have by content. Again, keeping in mind that how those classrooms are allocated will be determined by student and staff scheduling. When you look at the chart, you'll see there isn't necessarily a significant increase in the core content classrooms, but what these numbers don't show is the fact that we currently have nearly 180 periods per day across our campus where rooms aren't being used. So part of our plan involves using our classrooms more efficiently once we have our whole school over on one campus and one schedule. Additionally, on this slide, you'll see that we have an increase in some of our elective spaces that can be used flexibly, depending on what our schedule tells us we need as well. In addition to the 136 classrooms, we'll have several other spaces integrated into the design. This slide helps to quantify those various spaces and shows that we'll have 23 small group and large group spaces, additional space for intervention specialists to work with students with special needs. We also will have specialized spaces for some of our alternative special ed programming, space for our robotics pool, smart lab, 4 wellness room spaces, as well as a tech help desk, which we're really excited about. As we've been planning the programming and design, we've not only looked at scheduling spaces more efficiently, but we've also looked at data related to the energy efficiencies will be afforded in the new design. Though our new high school will be significantly larger, at more than 515,000 square feet, you can see that because we'll have more efficient systems, we will actually be using significantly less energy at lower cost per square foot. And when we think about this being a legacy project for the next 75 years, that will provide us more than $4 million in savings. So I know those were some exciting details, but we've come to the point in our presentation that we've all been waiting for, where we will reveal the design and the details of the floor plan. We're excited to have two of our DLR architects joining us virtually. Shelley Ingalls Yancey will share the floor plan specifics with you this evening, and Matt Schmid will navigate a 3D modeling fly-through that will help bring our spaces to life. The design for this new high school has been a very iterative process, with dozens and dozens of hours spent planning and designing, gathering feedback, revising, reflecting, and designing some more. So after several months of work on the schematic design, we're ready to give you a look of our new Gahanna-Lincoln High School. And I will pass it over to Shelley. Just one moment while we get the sound worked out.
Is the gym. So I'm going to zoom into the north. So here we have the main admin suite where you'll have the secure entry vestibule where you have to be buzzed in to be able to enter the school. As I was saying, this is the north side, so we have a north commons, which also helps with the lobby space for the performing arts. So the admin has the principal and key people in this suite, as well as a workroom and lounge. We have the Hamilton House, the special needs program here. The Performing Arts Auditorium and Stage, which seats 1,200 people. We have the orchestra, band, choir, and black box with some of their ensemble and practice rooms, as well as some support spaces in the back for the stage. The music tech classroom is also in the performing arts area, as well as scene shop and costume. You'll also notice that there are a lot of gray boxes, and that is what helps support the building functions and keep the energy costs down. You'll also start seeing the distributed dining that we have throughout the high school in these orange colors, and this is the main kitchen and servery. In this North Commons, we also have a learning stair that we have situated currently for proposed potential opening for a black box small informal performances as well. Here you'll also see the clinic on the south side of the entrance. I want to recap on the learning prides. So here we have the light blue classrooms, which is the core content, and there are 10 per pride. There's also 3 science rooms per pride, as well as the warehouse space, which is the extended learning for the classrooms and the science. You'll also start noticing that there are small group rooms and some more of that gray support space. You'll also see adjacent restrooms and stairs to get up to different levels. We've also incorporated departmentalized teacher labs at the entry to each pride, and then SPED intervention within each pride. To the south here is the same 10 classrooms, SPED and science, and the warehouse and circulation throughout the space in the teacher lab here. We have the connector between the 2 prides, which has large group spaces, and this also has a connecting stair that you'll start to see in the walkthrough that we do that connects all 3 floors, where we also have media on 2 floors, which is the library, and then we also have integrated special needs programs. As I move over to the east side of the plan, you'll start to notice that there's dark teal and light teal colors. The dark teal are all the CTE programs, and the light teal are the visual arts programs. And so those are scattered along the east edge of this hallway. We really wanted to make sure we're integrating those into the main core classroom area. You'll also notice that there is a suite here that is the distributed administration, which has the counseling offices and assistant principal offices, so that those professionals can be closer to the students. As we move down here, you notice the South Commons that also has a smaller food dining option for students. It has the entry for the gym vestibules. And then we have the main competition gym that will seat 2,500. That has locker room support on both sides, as well as storage. That has a direct connection to the field house. And then we also have a few CTE programs, as well as more support locker rooms and meeting rooms. As I move up to the second floor, we'll see that there's, you can see these open to below because we'll have the double height spaces for the gyms. And then there's wrestling and weight room and coaches suites with some special ed future fit programs. As I move back to the north, you'll see that this is the Commons connection to the below for the South Commons. And then this center portion here where the Prides and the CTE and the visual arts are, that's a 3-story building. And here you'll see again the similar Prides. And then we have again the special needs, the media, and some classrooms for future growth. Well, up here is the arts area for the 2D and computer arts. And then you'll also see the stacking of the admin and counseling. So I go up to the third floor. Again, you start to see that here are the 2 Prides, the connections with CTE, the counseling, the admin, special needs, and some more CTE classrooms down here. And we're also showing a proposed option to add 6 more classrooms to fill this circle for extended growth as well. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Matt now, who's going to do a fly-through of the space.
Thanks, Shelley. Now, before I get started, I just want to be able to orient everyone to where we are within our 3D model. You'll see in the upper left corner here, we have a mini map of what Shelley had just shown from our walkthrough of the plan. The intent of this 3D walkthrough is more to show you the spatial qualities of the areas. There are a lot of white walls. There are a lot of pieces of furniture and materials that have not been selected yet. So just wanted to give that as a little bit of a caveat before we started. We are entering into the west entrance to the athletic areas as a part of the walkthrough. As we're going through the doors, you'll see the main gym doors, as well as the additional seating for the South Commons servery area, where Shelley noted an a la carte space, you'll see right in front of you, a connection to the second floor. And right now we are going up the main north-south passage of the school. On the right side, you'll see classrooms, a TV broadcasting, some students recording podcasts, as well as some additional classroom space. As Jill noted, The hallways within the building are about twice as large within the main circulation areas as the existing building, which is what you're seeing currently. We're going to be taking a left here into a teacher lab, which are located at the entrances to each one of the academic prides located on each floor. On the left side of the teacher lab, you'll see some smaller rooms for individual touchdown, for phone calls, as well as some benching stations throughout the teaching labs as well. These function similar to the way that your current departments are distributed throughout your building for collaboration purposes. We're taking a left here into our first pride. On the left side, you'll start to see some classroom spaces with some flexible openings as well as some fixed openings. Those are the light blue spaces that Shelley showed on the floor plan. In the middle, you'll see the extended learning areas that were highlighted that have all the classrooms open to its academic center. You'll see here on the left that we have an example of one of those typical classrooms, flexible furniture, opportunities for exterior glazing to allow light to come not only into the classroom, but to the center space as well. As we're walking through, you can start to see how some of the classrooms have some film on the glass. This allows for a diffusion of light to carry through, but also allows for privacy and opportunities for teachers to have more focused classrooms. As we continue through the path here, we start to go into the intermediate collaboration area between the two academic prides. You'll see that there is a classroom on the right that has extended learning opportunities as well as areas that for small group and large group gatherings distributed throughout each floor. On the right, as an example, we're proposing where the robotics pool could be as a part of that extended learning opportunities. In front of us, you'll see one of the areas of the media center. This is on the first floor. Not only does it extend into the intermediate extended learning area, but also has a direct connection to the exterior courtyard to provide natural light and additional learning opportunities outside. Outside of the media center, you'll see a vertical connection between the floors that allow the prides to have a vertical connection throughout the building. We're going to go up those stairs onto the second floor, where you can start to see how that vertical connection plays between the three floor areas. At the end here, you'll start to see some small group areas for individuals to touch down and break out, as well as a connection to the third floor as well. On the back side of the classrooms, as we continue forward, you'll start to see small groups and large groups on the left side of your plan, as well as some additional classroom space for special education. As I noted before, the teacher labs are located in 2 locations on each floor, both at each entrance to the academic prides. So as we're passing here towards the North Commons, you'll see a peek into another one of those teacher lab spaces. As we go through the doors, we are now in the North Commons, where we are near the front entrance to the building, the entrance to the black box area, as well as the auditorium, and the main seating for our servery area. At the top of the stairs, you can start to see some additional separated, more quiet areas for dining, as well as opportunities for flexible classroom space that connect directly to the courtyard. We are currently proposing a connection between the black box and the main commons as an opportunity for additional learning, presentations, and performance. Backing up here, looking towards the main entrance, you can start to see different ways that we're introducing natural light into the building. Glazing at the front entrance provides direct natural light into the space, while we're also performing some diffused areas as well to provide natural light in other ways as well. On the other side, in the servery area, you can start to see some of the CTE classrooms on the lower level, as well as the art classrooms on the top level. Moving back towards the front entrance, you can see students having the opportunity to watch performance taking place. Not only does the learning stairs provide areas to watch these shows, but also areas for additional dining as well. We'll be taking the left here, circulating back towards our academic prides. Teacher labs are shown on the left, and similarly on the right, you'll see the infirmary area that Shelley had highlighted on the plan. As you walk through the doors, we'll be entering towards the west pride. So similar to the ones that we had already shown, some flexible seating areas for additional collaboration, direct connections between classrooms to our central learning space, where we will be ending the walkthrough.
Thanks, Matt. And just as everyone's aware, we are going to continue developing the design where we'll get into those materials and the finishes and acoustics as we move forward.
Thank you, Matt and Shelley. It was brought to our attention that viewers online were not...
Jill, if you're talking, we cannot hear you again.
Okay. It was brought to our attention that viewers at home were not able to hear much of the presentation of the floor plan, and we know we missed the very beginning. So we're going to ask Shelley to go through it again, but I promise the second time you see it, more starts to set in. So Shelley, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, can you hear me this time? I
can hear you on my end,
okay,
Shelley.
Okay. I'm hoping you guys can before I go. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So I do want to set the stage of this is one of the options of the site plans, but we are going to look at this floor plan because this is the focus that we're doing for whichever site option we choose. Okay, so let's get started. So the building's divided into really three main parts. We have the administration and the performing arts, the core curriculum and the CTE arts in the center, and then the gym building in the south. So I'm going to start in the north, and here what we have is the main entrance and the administration. And so here we have a secure vestibule, and as you come in, you'll be allowed into reception and then into the building once you've passed secure checkpoints. This is the main administration office with the principal, workroom, lounge, and some other support administration staff. To the north of that is the Hamilton House Special Ed program. And then we have the performing arts in the dark blue. This has the auditorium with 1,200 seats, and then the choir, band, orchestra, and black box. They all have support practice rooms and ensemble spaces, as well as dressing rooms along the backside of the stage. We have also some of these gray boxes around the building, and those are what help support the building to function. So you'll see some of those throughout the space. We also have the main kitchen and serving area for student food. And then this is the North Commons, where we have, oh, shoot. Can you guys still hear me? Oh.
I can still hear you clearly, Shelley.
Okay. I'm hoping it's okay. Okay, so we have the North Commons here. Okay, Jill, thank you. You're texting. Thanks. The North Commons has the some of the dining throughout here, where we also have a learning stair that has a connection looking over to the informal performance we're proposing with the black box. We also have the clinic to the south of the entrance. And then what you'll notice, we did see also in the walkthrough was the courtyard. So this white space right here is actually greenery and a courtyard that students and teachers can access. So I'm going to walk through the prides here. So we have 6 prides in total, and those are just a collection of 10 classrooms and 3 science class labs. This yellow space here is a extended warehouse space where classrooms can open up and kids can spill out into this area. It can also be used for small group learning and teaching. You're also going to notice within each pride that there are small group spaces, as well as sped intervention spaces and departmentalized teacher labs at the entry. We also have bathrooms at each pride. So that was the North Pride, and the South Pride is this space over here, which also has the 10 classrooms, the 3 science labs, sped intervention, and a teacher lab and restrooms. We also have stair connectors to get up to other levels quickly, also for exiting. And then we have special needs classes integrated into our prides. This center space right here has a large group area as well as media, which is like the library. As we go to the east side of the building, you'll start seeing the dark teal and the light teal spaces. The dark teal are CTE classrooms like engineering and architecture, and the light teal are visual art spaces. And down here is the 3D arts classrooms. We also have distributed assistant principal and counseling offices so that they can be closer to the students. And this stacks on all 3 floors. And as we move to the south, this is the South Commons with the food a la carte option. There's restrooms and a lot of seating. This is also the lobby for the competition gym, which you can see here. And that has support spaces such as locker rooms for PE, as well as all the athletics, as well as storage. The competition gym will hold around 2,500 people, and we'll have a direct connection to the field house here. The east side of the athletics wing is mostly locker rooms, some training rooms, and restrooms. I'm going to move to the second floor now. The second floor of the gyms, this is a double height space, so these gyms show open to below. You start seeing all the bleachers and the seating along here. We have the wrestling rooms, coach's suite, and weight room. And as I move north, this part of your building will be 3 stories high. This really is the same footprint as we go up, so we can be really economical. This is the North Pride and the South Pride, and those stack. You can start seeing some small group rooms here, the second floor media, and then we also have additional classrooms for growth. On the east side, we have the arts, the 2D art and the computer arts, as well as some business and health classrooms. As I go up to the 3rd floor, again, same footprint for the prides. You also see that connection that we showed in the walkthrough where you can see up with skylights above to let that light into the center of the building. And then these rooms over here for the South Pride. On the east side, you start to see culinary arts and CTE programs, as well as a few more special needs programs. We're also looking at proposing an additional 6 classrooms to complete the ring for the 3rd floor. And I hope everyone got that one this time. I think I'll stop sharing. Back to you, Jill.
Thanks, Shelley.
Sorry for our technical difficulties. I think people online could actually hear, but you didn't hear the beginning and here. So we hope you got more the second time through. The construction process in the pandemic and even before, with all the growth that's happening in Central Ohio and all the building that's taking place, and then the supply chain issues has caused us a lot of challenges. And so we have Mark Ogden from Turner Construction here to talk about that tonight.
Okay. So As the slide suggests, every construction project has its challenges. Bad weather, costs, site constraints, and logistics all need to be managed on every project. Now, however, construction projects have several unique challenges that are very different than even 1 year ago. We've all heard about Intel coming to town. This is indeed a groundbreaking investment for Central Ohio. The truth is, though, over the last few years, Columbus has been seeing billion-dollar investments from Amazon, Google, Facebook, and there is no end in the foreseeable future to that continued investment. The airport, Children's Hospital, Columbus City Schools all have mega projects on the horizon. OSU has released over $3 billion worth of construction into the market that will carry through the next 5 years. And this is all in addition to the normal market activity that we would typically see in Central Ohio. What this has done is it has put an enormous pressure on available labor. In other words, the bench isn't nearly as deep as it once was. And the impact is not just on availability, but also, and more importantly, in my opinion, on productivity. Another challenge that Steve mentioned is the supply chain. Supply chain issues are in the news nearly every day, and I know it has come up several times in these community engagement sessions as well. It continues to be a challenge. It's not going away. The time it takes to get materials is longer now than at any point in our careers. The time it takes to get critical materials, such as steel, roof insulation, and electrical gear, has essentially doubled. This has caused construction schedules all over the world to push or become extended. So what are we doing about it? Through creative design, a lot of collaboration, early procurement strategies, we've been working diligently to manage through these scheduling risks, finding ways to navigate and mitigate delays wherever we can. And right now, we are planning to start construction on the high school later this year and open the building for the 25-26 school year. Once the new building is complete, the existing high school can then be demolished and the site can be redeveloped.
So we had planned to try to open in the 24-25 school year, but with all our challenges with construction and supply chain issues, especially with things like structural steel, we're not going to be able to do that. And that's very sad for us because we wanted to make sure we could have this year's 8th grade class be part of the new high school. But we're just, the barriers and the challenges are just beyond our abilities to get that done in that time frame. And so we wanted to make sure everyone knew that tonight. Also want you to look at several site use options, and we want you to weigh in on them. Hopefully we're answering any questions you have tonight, but we're going to have a question and answer period soon. And then for a week, we're going to open a tool called Thought Exchange and let you comment and weigh in on others' comments. So we're hoping to get a lot of community engagement around that. What Paul Lawton from DLR, he's part of our design team, is going to do tonight is take us through 3 different site options. We have a very tight site. There are limited options to build because, remember, we have to have school as we're constructing the new building. And so it's a very complicated site, and Paul is going to take us through site use options A, B, and C and talk a little bit about each of them. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for joining us tonight and sharing your interest and time, both online and in person. As Steve and Mark kind of alluded to, the siting of the building is an important part of the design, and as the floor plan and some of the massing that you saw earlier was being developed, we were also working on some options for how to place the site with the most advantages to the district and community at the same time. And so what I want to walk through today is some of those. As mentioned, we had some parameters, right? And so after talking to some of the community, the district, and our friends at Russilli, we really started to identify some of those major site challenges. Utilizing the current building the full time for education was a huge one. That's a footprint on an already tight site that can't be moved until something is there to replace it. The adequate space for construction and to have that construction going on while students are on site in a safe manner was important, both from a traffic and equipment standpoint. And then obviously just the activities of the school, both educationally as well as athletics, was a consideration. So if you want to go to the next slide, this is our first option. We'll call it option A, and I just want to run through some of the facts of this option. But first I'll orient you a little bit to where we are. On the left-hand side, you can see where it says Hamilton Road. North is up, and then we have Havens Corners running left to right at the top of the screen. In this particular plan, what you'll see kind of on the left hand of the site is a dotted white line, and if you can see that, that's the footprint of the existing building. And so that's kind of the no-go zone as far as fields and new building go. On subsequent plans, we took that off, but we wanted to show it here on this one just so that you kind of get an idea of where it's at. Working with Russilli, we've made some broad strokes and really started to define kind of the cost of the projects, both from a duration as well as a scope standpoint. And so this project here and this scheme of the site comes in at that $158 million mark, which is kind of the budget for their overall project. This particular scheme, what it does is it moves the football field to the east and then builds the new building in between that football field and the existing building. The construction duration for this is about 35 months for the building itself, and then about 12 months for the site development. I think an important part to kind of highlight here is that the athletics would be kind of put out of commission while the site, or while the field is being relocated for about a year, and that's 12 months consecutively. And so that would take probably the 22-23 school year. The next thing that we consider in all three of the schemes that I just want to highlight is a little bit of the vehicular trafficking. And so it's always important with a big site like this to separate those activities as much as possible. And so what you can see here is on the upper left hand portion of the site, marked 1 is kind of the student parking. So students would pull in off of Hamilton Road and park in that portion. In between that and the building up on the north where you see the 5, if you can see that, that would be your special ed drop-off. And then down in the lower left-hand portion where you see number 2, that would be the staff parking. Along the bottom in the orange is where the buses would pull in for activities and drop off students from a day-to-day process and then exit back out to the south. The other thing we want to consider as we look at these sites, obviously, in all three, is the pedestrian circular flow. And so you can see at this one that the students and staff and visitors have direct access pretty much from the west of the building, the majority of them on that west facade. And then the final aspect that we started to focus in on is just the optics, or the primary focal point. And so we took kind of that important intersection of Hamilton and Havens Corner as the point of perspective. And as you can see, the main entrance is up there by 8. If you remember Shelley kind of walking you through the plan, it's on the northern portion of the building, so that can be viewed. The academics are the two kind of curvy linear forms in the middle, and that can all be seen from Hamilton Road as well. And then the last is the athletics, which are visible from that south. If we want to move to option B, this is a scheme where, again, we tackled a lot of those same problems and challenges, but just in a little different manner. What we proposed here was to leave basically the footprint of the existing field in the same place, and then move the building and design the building to the east of that, so in between the existing field location and the eastern portion of the site. This one, too, meets that $158 million budget mark that we were shooting for. Again, the duration to construct the building is 35 months with this one as well. And the site redevelopment is roughly 12 months. But the key here is that those 12 months are not consecutive months. And so really the duration of the sports and stadium impact is kind of over a 2-year span. And so there'll be different sports during those 2 years that will be intermittently affected throughout the construction. So that impact is basically from 2022 to 2024 for the field. But again, you can see that we have the student parking up in the northwest or upper left-hand corner. We do have staff parking in different locations in this one, kind of in the lower right-hand portion, as well as just below the field. We have bus parking coming in once again from the south, but more in a loop rather than before. And then the other change I think here is that the special ed drop-off is up in the northern east corner of the site. As far as pedestrian flow, you can see once again that the majority of pedestrians would be coming from that west side of the building around the stadium and then accessing the entry that would be to the north for the main entrance and then more southern around the stadium to the south for athletics. The last point is the primary focal point. And again, if you're looking from Hamilton or from Havens Corners or the intersection of both, obviously you can see the stadium and the northern portion of the building on Havens Corner Road, as well as the southern portion if you move south down Hamilton Road. The last option we'll look at is option C. And so this option really took into consideration what if we could just build the stadium later and put it someplace totally different, not in a vacant spot. And so again, I'll start with costs in this one. Because of the phasing, obviously, as I stated before, we're going to have to keep that existing building in operation until the new building is built. And so because of that, we'll be building the new building on the footprint of the existing football field. And so that's going to impact a little bit of athletics, a little bit more than the other two sites, as well as overall duration of the construction of the whole project. And so because of that extended duration of the project, the budget for this one is $161.5 million, both to account for escalation as well as extended construction times. The building, again, just like the others, would take 35 months, but the site redevelopment would take roughly about 18 months. And again, because of the phasing changes and differences between this one and the other two, that really impacts quite a few more school years. So athletics and the stadium impact would really be out of commission on this site for roughly 4 years, and so you're looking from 2022 to 2026. But doing all that, we were still able to take a look at vehicular flow, solve it in similar fashions with the student parking once again in the northwest side. You have your buses entering from the south once again. Student drop-off on this one is actually coming off of Havens Corners on the east side, you'll see there, and then it'll loop around what would be the staff parking on the east side by athletics, and then back up. And then pedestrian flow is much more surrounding the building this time, right? So you have staff and students coming on the east side that are being dropped off, and then you have student parking on the left side, and then bus parking to the south. And then finally, the aspect that we looked at was, again, just that primary focal point. And if you're looking at the intersection of Hamilton Road and Havens Corners, once again, you get a great view of the entry on the west side to the north. You get a good view of the academic portions and those curvilinear forms. And then athletics would be behind the stadium to the south. If you'd like to go to the next slide. What we're going to show on this slide is really all three schemes next to each other. And I know this looks really small, and we're not expecting you to get out your magnifying glasses. You will have the opportunity to view these online, as well as handouts, I think, after the presentation. But I kind of wanted to generally show you the big moves, right? So option A takes the field and moves it to the east and puts the new building in between the existing footprint of the existing high school and that relocated stadium. Option B leaves the footprint of the stadium in place. We will have to do some work on that existing spot, but then locates the new building all the way to the east on the other side of the stadium. And then option C is to relocate the stadium to the southwest and then put the building in the northeastern portion of the site.
And Paul, if I could just jump in and clarify just a couple things. In regards to the stadium being out of commission, we do want to make it clear that that doesn't mean the sports won't happen. Sports seasons will still occur. Students will still have the opportunity to participate in athletics and band and things like that. We would just need to get creative and make partnerships with other locations close to our district to support us for our home competition times, as well as be creative with where practices would happen while the stadium is out of commission.
Oh, sorry to not clarify that. I think the last point I want to make about this particular site is, as we've been considering all of these, we had our own kind of DLR architect, security person take a look at it, but we really thought it was important for the community as well as the district to have an outside third-party view, and so we did have that done, and they came back and thought that option A was the best from a security and safety standpoint. Option B was the third best, and then option C was the second. So just wanted to share that with the community as well.
So I will just touch on, there's a handout up on the screen. We don't expect you to be able to read it, but this has a lot of the information that Paul just shared regarding the site plan options. As you leave this evening, we have handouts printed out so that you can take this home with you and refer to the information as you're processing the information from tonight and preparing to provide feedback in the thought exchange. Also, we will have it shared out throughout the community and on our website for individuals who aren't here to get a hard copy tonight to be able to download that at home.
We're almost ready to get into our Q&A period, but I just wanted you to take a look at this corner. This is the way it looks today, and for years we've looked at this view with lots of pride that our high school has always been the rallying place for our community. We're a one high school town, and we have amazing academic, athletic, performing arts programs that have served our students well for decades. And this building has served us well. But this corner is going to transform in some form or another, no matter what site plan we choose. And we want you to think about this as a legacy project. This is a project that is going to serve our community and our students in the same way that this building did for the next 100 or so years. And we wanted to make sure that we were building a high school that was able to foster 21st century learning, where students could collaborate face-to-face, where teachers could be instructing in a way where they confer with students, they develop apprenticeships, where they are the guides on the side, and they really inspire students to dig within themselves and reach their potential. And as you saw on the fly-through, the combination of our classrooms, which are very traditional with four walls, but organically kind of open up to collaborative learning spaces, will give our teachers and our students a great deal of flexibility. Will give them the ability to collaborate on projects and project-based learning, and give them the ability to kind of discover things about the world that we've always been doing at Gahanna Lincoln High School, but doing it in a fresh, new, exciting, and inspiring way. And so we're excited to transform this corner, and we need your help. We want you to weigh in on our plan and our site plan, and so we will be taking in the input that we get from this meeting, from our thought exchange, dialogue with you, and the Q&A tonight, and we will recommend to our Board of Education what site plan is the best for our students and our community moving forward. And so we're glad you're here tonight. We're grateful you gave your time. We know you're busy. And so our next steps are very, very soon we will make a recommendation to our Board of Education on what site plan option we think is best. And we're going to take into account a recommendation from our Master Facilities Committee, from our experts, many of which you heard tonight, and from you, our community. And so we're excited to get your feedback. And so Thought Exchange will be up for a week. We're going to close it on February 7th. I think it's 10 p.m. And you can go on, like when you go home tonight, and see what people are saying. You can put your comments in. You can rate other people's comments. And we hope you visit the site throughout the week because it really is a dialogue and it's a great tool to have a dialogue and give feedback. So we're ready to take some questions. So we're going to pass out 3x5 cards. Please, one question per card. And with our experts, we'll try to answer the questions you have tonight. Please write as clearly as possible. We know it's not easy to write on a small card like this, but please write as clearly as you can. Thank you.
Encourage you to enter questions into the chat if you have any. We are going to start with the first question, asking what plans do you have for the one-room schoolhouse? What plans do you have for the one-room schoolhouse?
So we have been working with the Gahanna Historical Society to move the one-room schoolhouse to South High Street. And we found out that it's a very complicated move. The schoolhouse would have to be put on a lift and taken down Havens Corners, across Hamilton Road to Grandview Street. And there's lots of traffic signals and wires, and we'd have to involve the electric company, AEP, and all kinds of complications. And the price we got to do that, and there was only one company who responded to our request for proposals, and that was the amount was $389,000. And we thought partnering with the Historical Society was a good plan, a good idea. We still are considering that, but we're also considering costs. That's a lot of money to move it. So we may look at other options and maybe keeping it on the site as well. And so we're still vetting that, but we definitely want to make the one-room schoolhouse still part of our community. It's a big part of our third grade curriculum where they study community and our education, where they study history in their community. And we have volunteer retired teachers who lead that, and kids really love it, but we would also like to continue to open it up to our community. So it's very much going to stay in place. Determining where is what we're still working on.
Thank you. I think this next question will go to Paul. The eating areas didn't seem sufficient to house our large lunches. How many actual seats will be available for lunch?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, as we begin to dig into it, what we really strive to do was take into account basically 3,000 students over the duration of lunches. And so, as you saw, there was some distributed lunch eating opportunities. And after working with the district and some of the school administration, we did get up to that 3,000 number. So it's adequate for that growth that might be expected in the future.
And I will add that 3,000 is about 1,000 students over 3 lunch periods. And as Paul mentioned, the distributive dining model is something that we've been able to observe in action in other schools. And so we have a main kitchen and servery area. We've got options for things potentially like sub shop on the second floor, a la carte down in the south wing. So lots of options that we'll be considering and working with our food service staff regarding the distributive dining. The next question is related to Clark Hall. What will happen to Clark Hall? What becomes of Clark Hall? And what will happen to the existing school administration building?
So the school administration building will need to be torn down, and the administration office will need to be moved, and it will be moved to Clark Hall. One of the things in Ohio that it's important to note is that school buildings can be bid on by charter schools if a school district no longer uses the building up to 60% of its capacity. So we don't want that to happen, so we will use Clark Hall with our technology office and our current administration office. Our preschool will still remain there, but the Eastland Fairfield programs will move to the new high school.
Thank you. This next question I think is coming to Frank. Why is option B the same cost as option A, considering the stadium stays intact?
Option B would include renovations to the existing stadium, although that scope isn't finalized. The cost for those renovations would be significant. would potentially include replacing the track surface, replacing some of the bleachers, adding some outbuildings, some technology as well. So there is cost associated with that. The other thing to consider is when you have your stadium being the face of your campus, you're going to want to put a very nice facade on the back side of that stadium to make it look good. So there are costs associated with it that are in line with the new stadium.
Thanks, Frank. Paul, coming back to you. How are the open classrooms and glass doorways on the classrooms safe for students in the building?
Thank you, Jill. So I think an important thing to realize with the glass is obviously it's not completely designed, right? We'll be having further designs, meetings with the teachers and staff to find out exactly where and how that glass gets distributed throughout the building. I think an important thing to understand is if you're looking for safety of students, observation of those students is always key. And whether it's a student-on-student incident or some other incident, the sooner you identify an issue of security or safety, the less damage it can do. And so because there is all that glass, we are going to be strategic about having lockdown zones. And so it won't be just a wide open building in case of an emergency. But the glass actually is a safety feature. I know that's a little bit counterintuitive when you think about it. But again, the premise and what we've seen and heard from security professionals is the sooner that you can see an individual or an act that is causing harm to another individual or whatever the case may be, the sooner that you can identify that, the sooner you can rectify it.
Thank you. So several questions related to the stadium being out of commission, asking for clarification on how long each option takes the stadium out of use for students, as well as has the district considered options that do not impact fall sports, and what does interrupting athletics do to our sense of community?
Well, Ron, I'm not sure people online can hear us right now. So if we could correct that. They can hear? Okay. Okay, good. So taking the stadium out of use is troubling. I mean, it's a huge sacrifice to make. I remember going back to a high school I graduated from that was completely renovated. It was beautiful. And the basketball floor I played on was really small and not, as significant and beautiful as the one I'd seen. And I was like, wow, I didn't get to take part in any of this. And I just think it's really, really hard to tell someone who's a senior or a junior that they're going to have to play their games in another venue. And I don't minimize that, or nor do I think it's fair. But we have to have a new high school, and we have a very tight site, and we have to have high school while we're building, and there has to be entrance and exits for construction folks and parking, and it's just very, very hard. And it will be hard on our community. It'll be hard on our kids, and it's heartbreaking. And I wish we had a better answer. I don't know. Do you want to take the other part of that, the beginning part of that question, Jill?
It was related to the length of time.
The length of time, right.
Stadium would be out of use, and options for not impacting fall sports.
So I think both A and B and C affect all sports. Did you guys want to take the length of time, just why you need a year and the impact is so great?
Sure. So with option A, to rebuild a stadium in its entirety, it's a 12-month duration. Russilli has done similar projects, has a lot of scheduling history to draw upon, and that is a tried and true duration for building a new stadium. The impact to the sports that currently occupy that stadium will be a full 12-month duration. We'll have to take the first one offline to provide for site enabling work, building construction, while the new stadium in option A is being constructed. So there will be a 1-year displacement for virtually all sports that would compete or practice on that stadium. Go ahead.
That may not be clear is that in option A, the new building construction is taking place at the same time as the new stadium, and that's why the existing stadium is impacted.
Yes, correct. With option B, Frank had mentioned earlier the extent of the renovations that the existing stadium will likely have to incur. We know some are going to be required, most certainly, and they're not insignificant. Here, it doesn't all have to happen at once. What we can do with option B is we can perform some work over the summer months, some work can be performed in the spring, and we can do what we can to try and minimize those impacts. However, it's not concurrent construction. If it were 12 months of concurrent construction, all sports would be impacted. However, we may be able to lessen the impact. However, we'll extend the construction duration for those renovations in the existing stadium. For option C, in order to get the high school constructed and completed, we have to remove the existing high school, or a high school stadium. We then build that high school stadium. We build the new high school. The old building, this building that we're in right now, can then be demolished, making way for the proposed stadium in the southwest corner. That is a much larger impact to the students because the district would be without a stadium for essentially 4 consecutive years.
One of the things I'm sure you're wondering is who in the world would want to do that, right? But I do want to tell you that a lot of thought went into possibilities, right? When these 3 options are being presented, one of the questions that was asked was, if you had a blank slate, if you had a canvas, which is this campus, what might that campus look like? And then how would you build on it? How would you design on it and build on it? And this is what the design team came up with. So although there's some people in the crowd who might not like the idea of losing a stadium, that was the philosophy behind that option, if you had a blank slate.
Okay. Paul, this one's coming to you first. Can you talk about the cost implications for the round design versus a rectangular design?
Sure. I think there's a couple cost implications, and Frank, feel free to chime in here. I think all designs are kind of, to Jill's earlier point, iterative, right? So as we're designing these things, we're working within that finite budget that we know that we have to work with. And so along with that, we want to give as much access and potential to every student and every class to those extended learning areas as possible. And so as we started out, I think we started with some more rectangular features, et cetera. The different processes leaded us to kind of a curvilinear type form. And it does a couple things for us, honestly. From a square footage basis, it cuts down square footage. Anyone that remembers their high school geometry class, right? The smallest perimeter with the most square footage is a circle. The other thing it does is it cuts down our exterior facade percentage, but I think it was 14% if I remember the math correctly. So both of those items equate to real dollars. If you go square footage of exterior facade or square footage of building, right? That's real construction time and cost. And so, Frank, I don't know if you have anything to add, but.
Oh, I think one of the things that you brought to us is that the circular design allowed for more efficiency of space. So you don't have long rectilineal corridors that instead of this circular movement within the building. And so although you would think a round building would cost more, there's less square footage in the end.
Not to get in the weeds, but just to be clear and transparent with everyone, it's not a true circle, right? We're not curving glass, we're not curving brick or anything like that. We're using straight standard pieces and modules, but in a grand scheme of a large building like this, they start to lay out in a curve. So,
Steve, this one's coming to you. Connected to the stadium again, what schools do you propose would help when they have exact schedules and game schedules set? How will students get to different practice locations? And do we have any idea about what it would cost to rent practice field or game field from other venues?
It will be an expensive enterprise. We will have to rent fields. Our athletic director and our business director have reached out to school districts around us, so Whitehall, Reynoldsburg, New Albany, Columbus Academy. We will reach out to Ohio Dominican, possibly Otterbein. I mean, it's not going to be an easy task to navigate through. And it will be, we're not sure of the cost. I know we've rented our field and to other schools, and it's expensive.
Thank you. Have there been traffic study comparisons for all three options?
So we have not done traffic study for all three options yet.
Okay, coming your way, Paul. Currently, the school is challenged with regard to wayfinding, connectivity, and flow. Could you speak to how the planning strategy improves this overall? How does the radial pride planning contribute? It's an interesting idea.
thank you for that. I had the honor to shadow a student, when was that? Last year, I believe, and walk around the current facility. And even with the clarity of the COVID kind of circulation paths, the one-ways, et cetera, still, the way the student that I was shadowing had to ping pong across the building was challenging, to say the least. Even as an architect, I was kind of lost at some points. So I think the big move with this design, obviously there's the curves within the prides, but I think the big move is really segmenting the building the way that Shelley described. Having the performing arts all to the north, the main core academic spaces, both from a CTE, science, and core curriculum classes kind of in the heart of the building, and then having the athletics to the south really starts to simplify the way that the students are going to move. We know that students are going to go from core curriculum to athletics and then core curriculum to performing arts, but we're really using that academic space in the middle to hopefully cut down on some of that traffic time. The fact that those academic spaces are stacked on 3 stories is going to, again, just keep all that activity in the core. So instead of going to the north of the building, I think the existing building's almost a quarter mile if you track it in one sense, right? So instead of having a kid walk in a half mile in 3 periods, we're hoping to cut that down with just kind of the general layout of the building. The curves, I think, is another discussion. The big move with the curves is to offer that collaborative learning space in between, right? And so, again, I think having those curves come off that main north-south spine, again, shortens that travel distance, shortens that time between classes, et cetera. So as we move down the design, I think there's a ton of ways to handle the day-to-day identification of the spaces, whether it's with finishes or with colors, et cetera. We've dealt with schools all over the country that have a ton of different kind of geometries, and those things can really help kind of navigate and make things easier, both for the visitors as well as for the students on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. What What landscaping and light and sound mitigation is planned to offset the increased noise and light for the adjoining neighborhoods in option B? It says B, I think A and B, potentially.
Yeah, sure. You know, we have general code requirements that all three schemes are going to have to meet, and so we're held a little bit to the letter of the law there to meet those three requirements. All three sites do also offer a green kind of buffer between that eastern border, that neighborhood, and whatever is happening on the west side of that border. We've discussed things such as berms as well. We know that some of the trees along that side are going to be impacted just due to the kind of drip line of the branches, et cetera. The plan and the district's been very animate about this, is that any tree that's lost will be replaced, if not by one, by multiple. And so I think the intent and the heart of the project is really to make that eastern border as good and better than code and better than the letter of the law that we can make it, and be sensitive to the residents on the other side.
DLR has done a couple of studies on light and sound, and so a firm came to our Pickerington North football game. It was a playoff game, big crowd, and they measured the current decimal rating at that game as 60, and when they extrapolated it out in option A, moving the field closer to the neighborhood, the decibel level was 6 higher, so 66 decibels. And we've also done some light studies where the lights that would be on the field would be much more efficient, so the pollution that spills over from our current lights, which are old, would be much less, if none at all, possibly. Do you want to talk about that, Paul?
I think you kind of hit it on the head. Obviously, the new lighting with the LEDs, et cetera, can be much more targeted, reducing that kind of overflow and spillage. And so that's, again, all these things are in consideration of those neighbors.
Will there be lockers in the new high school?
Great question. It's a question we ask on, or get asked on almost every school, and every school has a little different answer. There will be lockers. We're currently planning for, I believe, a quarter of the student population. We know that a lot of high schoolers aren't using lockers right now. Sometimes some school districts see them as security concerns. So it's really a process working with the school principal and administrators, as well as just test the appetite of the students. So we've already done some studies on the existing building about the sizes and how many students actually use them, et cetera, and that'll go into the equation with the final design.
Thank you. Have we considered using brands to sponsor the building of a stadium, like Nike, et cetera?
We have talked about doing some fundraising regarding to naming different things. We have not talked about it specifically to building a whole stadium.
Are there any variances needed to achieve the 3 plans?
As of right now, I don't believe there are. I think we planned them all to be as copacetic with the codes up to date as of right now. You know, there's been discussion about a lot of other options which would require variances, but the ones you see here, I believe, all are within the setbacks required. All are going to meet the sound and lighting requirements that the city has, all meet the parking requirements, et cetera. So if we run into issues that require variance, obviously we'll certainly go down those paths. If we find an option that suits the community better, that requires us going for an option or a optional variance, we'll certainly investigate those as well.
Why is the school turned around in option B?
A really good question. So, again, you know, all of these kind of design moves are running in tandem, right? And so, one of the big things that was coming out of the initial option A was the relationship between the stadium and the school itself. And perhaps maybe what got lost in the walkthrough of the building was that what we're proposing is that there's an interior connection to kind of the top of that, in scheme A, what would be the top of that western bleacher, so that you could go up to a little plaza on top and, overlook the field. Using it also as a potential outdoor dining opportunity for students during the day. And so when we left the footprint of the football stadium in place, we flipped the building footprint as well, just to keep that same connection, so that relationship between the building and the field could be that same synergetic feel. Obviously, option C, that's quite a change, and so that connection isn't there in option C, but that's the motive behind it.
Will there be a Columbus State Community College on site?
Some of you might remember we had Columbus State at Clark Hall when it first opened, and I think the thinking was more students would sign up for classes that were run by Columbus State, but that did not really yield more students for them, and it wasn't cost effective. So there are no plans to have Columbus State have an office or classes here, but our students can take college credit plus classes from Columbus State, some of which our teachers teach, some of which Columbus State professors teach.
What are the restrooms like in the school? Are there separate boys and girls and unisex options?
Yeah, another great question. Obviously, the landscape around that is changing quite a bit, and so we work with schools all over the country, and really what I can tell you is that we do our best to be inclusive with our restrooms, as well as meet the letter of the code. And so the code right now requires some things that probably don't lean into inclusivity the way that is efficient from a construction standpoint, et cetera. There has been some case law that we are investigating as we speak recently on the subject. But at the end of the day, like I said, we've worked with schools all across the country. We have different solutions. We're going to tailor that solution to meet the needs and requirements of the students of Gahanna Jefferson, and be as transparent and open about those as possible.
Will the levy that was passed generate enough money to cover option C?
No, it's 161, so I think it's $3.5 million more than we have allotted for the high school, which is $158 million.
What is the goal as it relates to number of parking spaces provided? Which site plan provides the most?
Yeah, right now, I won't claim that they hit the exact number, but we were, again, kind of working within the budget that we had, obviously within the code requirements of the city. And so, for discussion purposes, they're probably close. There might be a few, handicap parking spots or staff parking spots that might fluctuate by one or two here or there, but they should be relatively equal.
Thank you. Frank, I'm going to bring this one to you. In Plan B, when will the fields be shut down, or is it random? So that's the one that spans inconsistent months over 2 years.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, it will depend on the scope of those renovations. One thing in particular is the track renovation, the track replacement would need to be done in the summer. That's the one thing I can tell you. But there may be other work that has to take place also in the summer, so that could be a year later in a subsequent summer.
Thank you. Steve, coming to you. How will you afford the additional staffing to maintain a 30% bigger facility?
So as we grow, that's a really good question. We're going to have to hire more teachers as our student population gets bigger. We've factored that in to our 5-year forecast, so I think we built something like 90 more positions into the 5-year forecast over the next 5 years. we've added quite a bit of staff in the last couple of years. And so we're going to have to continue to hire teachers, counselors, assistant principals, you name it. If there's a position in our district, we're going to need more people doing it. And it's also just a competitive market. It is really, really hard to find teachers right now, substitutes, bus drivers, and so it's a big concern as we look to the future.
When looking at the safety and security, can you speak to why option A is considered to be the most safe and secure?
So we had feedback from our chief of police and the Ethan Moffett, who is coordinates traffic with the city. We also had feedback from a company that does safety analysis of schools and businesses across the country. The name of the company is Armada. And they both concur that site use plan A is the safest. It gives us the best view from Havens, Granville, and Hamilton in a term called passive observation. There are less choke points, meaning if there is an incident, it is more open and people can leave more quickly. If police have to surround the building because there's an incident, it gives them standoff distance and they can develop a plan and move in. And so that's just sort of at a high level what they told us. They all have decent traffic flow, but I think A is the best. And the whole idea of the whole building being visible from the corner is what they really responded to the best. Did you want to add anything, Paul?
No, I think that covers it. I'll lean to the experts and their opinions. I think just as a general rule, as we've worked on buildings, it kind of goes back to that whole glass inside the building and that observation piece. I think that passive observation point that was brought up is a big one. If you think, I always bring up this illustration, but I grew up in a house that had kind of two doors on the front facade and one that was in the back that led to the basement behind evergreens, right? Our house got broken into twice when I was growing up, and which one do you think they went to, right? The one that was hidden by the evergreen. So I think that passive observation, having as much of your facade on display for as many eyes to see is a pro.
If we can't fund option C, why is it being offered? How would it be funded?
We would have to look at how to fund option C. What we wanted to do was come up with as many options as possible for a very complicated, very tight spot or tight site. So currently we would be thinking about ways to fund it, and that discussion would be ongoing. We don't have that funding designated as of yet.
How does option A affect Savern Place, and how close to the adjacent neighborhood property line will the relocated stadium be?
Option A, I believe this property setback minimum is 40 feet. Right now, if I remember correctly, we're just above 47, so we're trying to maximize that. Again, there's a lot of things at play here. I don't want to get into the weeds too far, but really what's driving that is between the existing building and what we're constructing for the new building, there's going to have to be some construction clearances and setbacks just to get vehicles and materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we pushed that new building in option A as close to the existing building as my friend Frank down there would let us. And then we took that field and moved it as far west and connected it, like I mentioned earlier, to that. And so that gained us a few feet, 6 or 7 feet from the minimum setback. And then besides that, it's all the other things that we talked about, introducing potential berms, obviously having the new lighting that's going to have better cutoff than your existing lighting, And then handling the sound, I think, might be a little bit of an administration and sports aspect, but doing all that we can, to replant trees, et cetera, to make that side as good as possible.
I go back to that last question. One possible way to fund option C would be to use permanent improvement dollars that were voted in 2014. We have not used any of that money for the high school because the plan all along was to build a new high school. So that might be one option. We get $3 million a year. That was voted in in 2014, and we've been using that to replace windows, roofs, HVAC systems, and many other things. We use it also for technology.
What does the outside of the school look like?
Yeah, another great question. That's the exciting part, right? Again, we're in design phases right now, and so form follows function, and there's a process that we go down, and so we are just getting into what the exterior looks like. It's a little bit of a discussion of what's economical, what's going to last in a 75 to 100-year building, et cetera. As of right now, it's going to be, the majority of it's going to be masonry. Obviously, we're going to have windows and things like that. Some of the larger spaces might be architectural finished precast. We're investigating that both from a cost standpoint as well as from a scheduling standpoint. But at the end of the day, we want to offer you something that's going to be durable, that's going to be low maintenance, that's going to not be costing you money to replace or fix or be a burden on the district rather than something that will stand the test of time.
Indoor track needs to be included in the field house, considering Gahanna track and field and cross country are tops in the state. Why hasn't it been included?
We looked closely at including an indoor track, and it was just too big a space to include it. It requires a lot of space for an indoor track because the courts would have to be in the middle of it, and square footage is what drives construction costs, and so we were disappointed. We wanted to look at that, but we aren't able to afford it. And Mark, did you want to weigh in on that? Or
You covered it. It was really a cost decision. It was explored, but it was cost prohibitive.
Is there a plan to create an option D that includes working around athletic and community needs?
we have looked at countless options. I'm not sure what option D might look like, but certainly if you have ideas on that, we want to hear from you. You can put it in Thought Exchange. You can email us. We're willing to meet with you. We know the impact of missing any athletic season at a home field is very difficult. And so I think what that question was really getting at, is there a way to not have that happen at all? And that would be a very difficult thing. We have tried to consider all the things we can to build a high school while we're having school and still have athletics, and it's just it's a really difficult task.
Will the Blacklick location sports complex be up and running before you take away softball, tennis, etc. on the current site?
We are currently scheduling for a phasing plan that will provide for the appropriate swing space for tennis, practice fields at Blacklick Athletics so that they are not impacted.
Why were the plans not given to the voters prior to voting on the increase in taxes?
Oh, difficult. that was a very good question, but it's a difficult thing to do. We can only engage with architects, construction firms, and owners reps once we have a bond that we can move forward with. And we did do some conceptual designs. We did a book of possibilities, and we looked at different ways that the building might look like on our campus. But you know, once we got into planning, the reality became very stark that we were going to have school while we were running a construction site, and there aren't limitless options. We have very few options, and we know it's very, very difficult.
Was the Intel plant taken into consideration in the enrollment survey?
No, it was not, because it was just developed. I think it was highly secretive until the last couple of weeks. But we will include it in our next iteration of our enrollment study, which will be out sometime in the spring.
Getting things to grow in a 3-story interior courtyard does not seem feasible. What, if any, design features are being contemplated to actually make it a viable green space, usable green space?
Yeah, again, another really great question. So what we've been doing actually in courtyards now, or I should say recently, is actually introducing artificial turf, not only from the growth aspect, which was really a good point, but secondly, just from a maintenance perspective. You know, this courtyard is surrounded on 3 sides, and so I'm sure there's complications in bringing in lawnmowers and weed whackers and things like that. So we've really started to go to some kind of hard and softscape artificial turf type options. So.
Okay, we have just a couple more. We've done our best to kind of consolidate and condense where questions are similar. Was moving the outdoor athletic facility to another location even considered?
You mean, we are, the fields on this campus, so softball, the practice field, the tennis courts are being relocated. So those things that are being displaced will be moved to the Blacklick site. So we did consider moving some things. I think that question might be asking, did we consider moving the stadium somewhere else? And the truth is, we don't have anywhere to move it. The Jefferson Township trustees made it very clear when we sought approval for the fields that are going to be at Blacklick that they did not want lights, they did not want a stadium there. And there were many residents out there that came to the meeting that they had when our plan was up for approval and expressed that point. I just want to clarify that our enrollment study, so this was a couple questions ago, took into account all the land that hasn't been developed and built that into our enrollment forecast. And so we looked at current housing stock on all sides of town, current multifamily, so apartments, and any land that had not been developed yet, and we factored in its development to build in our enrollment forecast. So, Intel question, we do know that lots of people are going to be moving here. There'll be a higher demand for houses, but we think we captured that in our forecast because we took into account the land that wasn't developed yet that will soon be developed.
Why has demolition of the old Lincoln Elementary not started so that we could have cleared space when layout is decided?
One of the things we always try to do in construction is to package things, and so we would package the demolition of that building with other demolition that would be taking place for the stadium or later the high school.
Has eminent domain and taking close land been considered?
From what I understand, we don't have to consider eminent domain. We're going to use this current site for the way we're using it now, which is why we probably won't need any variances. It's built for a school use. I mean, the school is built on it, and so we don't have to engage in any form of eminent domain.
The school is being built on a lot that is too small. Does the district not own other land? Is there another space in Gahanna the high school could be built?
I think the site is plenty big for what we want to build. The problem is that we have a building where we have to have school for the next few years as we're building. And that's what makes the site tight and difficult. Once we build the high school and the athletic fields, the field house and everything that goes into it, we'll have plenty of space once we tear down the old high school.
Was the decision to not build a second high school made before the population study was done?
No, it was made after the population study was done in 2019, and we had community engagement around the high school in early 2020.
Do you know how many subcontract and/or dollars Turner Construction has spent for minority biz women owned for this project to date?
Turner Construction is merely the owner's rep on this project. We will not be subcontracting any work. I think that question might be directed at Russilli.
We haven't written any contracts yet on this project.
And the last question for the evening, why only 3 stories? It's cheaper to build up, plus less roof size, water runoff, and better for lead building.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is something that we investigated both from a 2-story to 3-story to 4-story, again, to minimize that footprint. I think that's a logical kind of train of thought that we went down ourselves. What we started to notice was as we went to a 4th story, fire separation and other code requirements really started to incur costs on the overall construction of the building. That, again, it comes down to a value proposition, right? Yes, you do get that smaller square footage, but the cost for some of these other systems start to rise due to code requirements. And so we settled back down on the 3-story because we thought massing-wise as well, it fit better with the auditorium and gym spaces, et cetera. And quite honestly, once we got that academic core, the 3 stories really started to suffice from a square footage standpoint. So.
I just want to correct a mistake I made earlier. So we said that this 8th grade class wouldn't be a part of it, but I was wrong. When we finish the building in 2025, this year's 8th graders will be able to be a part of the new high school as seniors. So I wanted to correct that. Also, we're going to pass out flyers tonight with the information about Thought Exchange as you're leaving. We hope you get on there and comment on what you heard tonight. And we hope you visit it more than once and kind of look at what people are saying, because it's a digital way to sort of have a dialogue with other people in the community. And we also want to encourage you to go to our website, our master facilities page. There's lots of good information. This presentation will be uploaded there so you can watch the entire video of it, or you can encourage people who weren't able to be here tonight or online to watch it. We will also have the slideshow separate, so if you wanted to click through the slideshow, you can look at that. And we will have a PDF of the document that Paul went through, A, B, and C, the trade-offs and the benefits of each. So we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We know you're busy, We really appreciate you coming out and asking your questions, and we want to thank the folks who are also online. So thanks very much, and don't forget to get on Thought Exchange if you have the time. Thanks very much.